Hi, everybody. My name is Jeff Lanza. I was a special agent with the FBI for over 20 years, and for most of my career, I was involved in white-collar crime. Well, let me take that back. I investigated white-collar crime. I wasn't actually involved in it myself. The two parts of the FBI's white-collar crime program that we'll be talking about today are identity theft and cybercrime. It's all about how we stay safe from these types of crimes. And when it comes to that, sometimes the national media ask me to do interviews about these topics. This is a screenshot of me being interviewed on CNBC, and they asked me on the show about how the hackers commit the crimes. Well, that's what we're going to talk about in the presentation. They also asked me about why they do it. Well, the incentive is pretty clear. It's for profit. And here's the thing, we can't change that incentive, but we can make it harder for the criminals to reach that incentive. That's what the program is about today. So first I'll talk about protecting your identity, and then we'll get into cybercrime. I'll show you the tricks the criminals use to deceive us and how to lock down your computer. All right, so once we do all that, you will get a sample of the type of things I talk about in my presentation. In fact, there's a handout that goes with my presentation. It's a 5-page handout. This is distributed to the audience, and if it's clients of financial advisors, they get this handout as a permanent resource for the presentation that they see in this virtual environment. There's 2 pages on identity theft, and there's 2 pages on cybercrime prevention, in addition to the executive summary that you just saw on the first page of this document. So let's get right into it, protecting your identity. Now, in this section of the presentation, I generally cover 3 things. The first is creating an online Social Security account. Then I talk about freezing your credit reports and why that's important. And I talk about protecting the paper in your life. So we're not going to cover everything because this is a sample presentation, but let me talk about freezing your credit reports and why this is so important. Now, I've listed on the handout the 4 credit reporting agencies. I know there's 4 credit reporting agencies, not just the major 3 that most people have heard about. Innovis is a smaller one, but we're not going to leave that one unprotected. We're going to make sure we freeze all 4 of our credit reports. And the reason why that's important is because it prevents criminals from opening up new accounts in our name, credit card accounts, or getting loans in our name, or anything that requires a credit check can be prevented if you have frozen your credit reports. It's easiest to freeze your credit reports online, and I'll show you how to do one just as an example. You have to freeze all 4 independently, but this is just one example. At TransUnion's site, you'll come to a page that looks like this if you go directly to that website. And then you're going to freeze your credit reports, easy as this. Keep in mind that keeps you safe from fraud. It doesn't affect your current credit scores or your current credit card relationships, and it's free to freeze your credit reports. Comes time to lift the freeze, you come right back to that site. You can lift it temporarily so someone can check credit. If you're getting opening up a credit card account, for instance, you can lift that freeze temporarily. And here's another thing that's important. If you freeze the credit reports of minors, you can keep them safe until they become an adult. Minors can be victimized by identity theft. Federal law recognizes this risk and allows parents to create a credit report for a minor because they generally don't have them, and then freeze it at the same time. This is a way to keep them protected. And if you're a financial advisor listening to this presentation, this is a great way you can add value to your clients. I know you talk to them about retirement planning, and Social Security is part of that. But you should also talk to them about creating a credit freeze, not only for themselves, but also for their kids. This is about generational planning, right? Helping everyone in the family. It's a good way you can add value to the relationship by suggesting these things to them. It's all on the handout if you need more information about that. I also like to talk about the paper in your life in this part of the presentation. I like to tell people this: never, ever do this. And you know what I mean? Don't mix pansies with salvia. They just don't work well together at all. Of course, I'm talking about the flag. Don't put it up when you have mail in there. Take sensitive mail to the post office because people will steal mail, especially checks. Criminals will wash the ink off a check and use that for fraud. So make sure you take checks to the post office, or even better, pay bills electronically. It's a lot more secure than putting checks through the mail system. So we talk about that a little bit, and also some effective ways to handle trash. But if you want to get less mail and less trash that you have to deal with, sign up for e-delivery of statements. It's not only about going green, it's about fraud prevention, as these documents can be used for fraud if they're stolen from incoming mail or from trash if they're not shredded properly. Now, the next portion of my presentation, that's just a sample of the first portion. We talk about more things in that section, but in the next section, we get into cybercrime. And I talk about some of the tricks that the criminals use to deceive us. I get into some COVID scams. If criminals are very topical and timely in how they try to deceive us, how criminals try to take over our accounts. I'll show you some examples of that, and then wire transfer fraud. Now, generally, before I start this section, as we're about a third away into the presentation, I like to pause for a minute and reflect on a question people often ask me. They say, Jeff, when did you join the FBI, and why did you join the FBI? Well, I joined the FBI in 1988, and I wanted to become an FBI agent because in my family, growing up in Connecticut, I come from a big Italian family. There were 5 boys in my family. And every Christmas we had a tradition. We got around the TV and we watched this movie. Now, the movie that we watched taught me about life and loyalty and how business should be conducted. And if you've seen this movie, maybe on Christmas or whenever, it's a good movie to watch. But this is not the movie that my family watched on Christmas Day. We actually watched this movie on Christmas Day that taught me about life, loyalty, and how business should be conducted. Anyway, that got me interested in the mob. No, not joining the mob, but investigating the mob. So when I got sent to Kansas City as a new FBI agent, I did get to work a mob case. Now, there's a lesson in what you're going to see next. So watch what happens when Tony and Joe are talking on the phone, 2 mobsters. We have the phone tapped. So the FBI is listening to the conversation. And here's how it goes. Tony says, Joe, I'm really glad you called. And Joe goes, yeah, why? And Tony goes, I got a little problem. I think the FBI is tapping my phone. And Joe goes, well, what are you going to do about it? And Tony goes, well, I got a new number. So here we go, lacking any common sense. And Joe says, okay, good, give me the number. Now, Tony gets a little common sense. He says, wait, I better not give it to you on the phone. I'll meet you for lunch and I'll give it to you then. And Joe says, well, I can't meet you for lunch. Tony says, okay, I'll give it to you now on the phone, but I'll give it to you backwards. So we proceeded to give him these 7 digits in reverse order. And what did the FBI do? We got our best cryptologist on that one right away. We had the number figured out in record time. It only took us 6 months with the powerful computers we had in the 1980s. Now, I use that example, it's a true story, to help illustrate a key point. How important is common sense in everyday life? When it comes to scams, it's important too. Criminals try to manipulate our thinking so we're not using common sense. They want us to use emotions to make decisions. When we do that, we might make bad decisions. So let's look at some of those tricks. In fact, they start with phone calls. As clients and others are staying home more now, they get phone calls. Robocalls are at a record pace right now. Sometimes your caller ID may not indicate the number that's being used to call you. Sometimes it may show a number that looks like it's in your neighborhood based on the digits. Sometimes it may show a number that looks like it's an important agency that we need to talk to. These are tricks. Caller ID can be spoofed to indicate these false numbers. And the rule is we never give information to people who call us on the phone. I think it can be used to steal our identity or maybe get access to our money. Now, I also like to talk about text messages as well. As criminals are using those around today's COVID scam to try to get people to respond, to provide information about their bank accounts or maybe social security numbers, which can be used to steal their identity. So don't respond to unsolicited text messages. And even emails can be used in this way too. Now, I doubt the Treasury Department's communicating from a Gmail account, right? And I doubt the Treasury Department's asking you for information in a non-secure email, including your bank account information and your social security number, right? And referring to your bank account information as your routine number versus a routing number. I don't think they would be making that mistake either. So watch out for phony emails designed to steal our information or our money. And then even worse than that is when criminals put malicious software on a computer in an emotional email like this. If you look at this email, it already doesn't make sense because the IRS thinks you owe them money, they're going to send you a letter about it, not an email. Now, if we clicked on this attachment, right, it could put malicious software on our computer, and that could cause us a lot of problems. I talk about that in more detail in the presentation, but one other thing you can do is take your mouse and hold it over the sender, and that holding process or hovering will give you a reveal of who the true sender is. And so this is important to know. You know that's not coming from the IRS, it's coming from someone with a Gmail account. Now, there's another way they can try to take over our accounts besides putting malicious software on our computer, and that's through emails like this. Now, this is a real example of an email that came from what looked like a big bank. Now, you recognize the bank, but I took out the bank name and the logo that was in there, and I'll just cut and paste a generic one in to show how easy it is for criminals to make things look real. The criminal wants you to click on this link. If you look at the link, it looks okay. That's the right format for a link, the name of the bank.com / Of course, I've taken out the bank name, but it has the right format. But there's a motion here too, by the way. They're going to pay you money to fill out a survey. That's the ruse to get you to click on this link. Now, if you take your mouse though and hover over the link, this is what I try to tell people, always do that before you click on a link, and you'll get a reveal of where the true link is going to send you to. And that's not the bank site. That's a weird site. I'm not sure what that is, but that hovering to discover helps you remember that term or what you can do to reveal the true link. Also tells me something else. .ua before the first single slash in the link tells me that that website is hosted in a foreign country indicated by those two letters. If you look that up, every country has a two-letter internet code. .ua refers to the Ukraine. I doubt your bank or my bank is hosting websites in the Ukraine. So another indication of fraud. Hovering helps reveal that. Now, suppose you're looking at emails on a pad or a phone. You can't hover, you don't have a mouse, but you can, in this real example of an email that looked like it was coming from PayPal, you can hover, can't hover, but you can press and hold. So press and hold with your finger, and on the screen of your pad or phone, you'll get a reveal of the true site. That's not PayPal's site, and that's also in a foreign country. How do I know that? .id stands for Indonesia. I don't think PayPal is hosting websites in Indonesia. So I try to cover these things with people as well to help predict where a site is going to send you to if you were to click there, or where that link will send you to. Email accounts, it's so important to protect those. I spend a little bit of time on this because criminals try to get access to our email accounts through phishing emails like this. An emotional term, someone has your password, they've used it in a foreign country, and if you click on change password, an unsuspecting Gmail user would be sent to a fake login page. So what would happen if a criminal got access to an email account? What are they going to do? Read my emails? That's exactly what they're going to do. And let's take an example. Let's say a guy named Mike Smith is victimized by this. So Mike puts his credentials in there, and now the criminal has access to Mike's email account. What are they going to do with that? Well, they first may start by victimizing Mike's friends, right? Have you ever got an email that comes from someone that you know, and you're wondering, why did my friend send me this weird looking link? Well, your friend didn't send it to you. Someone who hijacked your email account sent it to you. Why though? Well, it could be spreading malware to your computer. All right. Maybe it'll offer you a login page for another site where you have an account. Maybe they'll hold your computer hostage. That's called a ransomware attack, and they don't release it to you until you pay them a ransom. Now, in my longer presentation, I do cover ransomware and specific things you can do to stay safe from that. But these type of things can happen even in emails from people we know. We have to be careful where we click, especially if it takes this format. They'll also go after Mike's money. And if you're a financial advisor, you know about this situation. Criminals will go into an email account of a hijacked victim, and they'll find the financial advisor. And sometimes they'll even go through the trouble of going through past emails between the financial advisor and the email person of the email account that has the email account that they hijacked, right? And then they'll be able to craft something up. Here they have a treasure trove of information. Mary and Mike have communicated many times, and they can go back in those past emails and they can try to personalize something to make it look like to Mary that she's really talking to Mike, and maybe she won't call to verify this wire transfer. Now, you know, and I know that you're not going to do this. As a financial advisor, especially, you're not going to do this. You have your clients' assets protected, you're watching their back, and this is why, we always call them to verify. We always get a verbal. But we also, in our personal lives, need to stay safe from wire transfer fraud. And I also talk about that in my presentation in a lot more detail in some of those examples. But one other way to keep our email accounts protected is through multi-factor authentication. Now, this not only applies to email accounts, but also to financial accounts. So using a password is one thing, but you also want to use a second factor, and that would be a PIN code that's sent to your phone. This MFA or two-factor authentication prevents a criminal who's 6,000 miles away in another country, or 6 miles away, even in the same city you live in. They can't log into your accounts because they don't have the phone in their hands. MFA is a great way to keep our accounts locked down. I talk about that in the presentation to help people stay more secure. Now, in the third and final part of my presentation, I talk about keeping your computer safe. And I talk about three things here. I talk about how to be aware of pop-ups, how to update and back up your computer, and also how to use passphrases instead of passwords, because they're more secure, and I'll explain that in just a second. But let me cover the pop-ups for just a minute. A lot of people are home more, they're ordering things online more often now. They may click on a link or a Facebook feed that says, hey, see this video, and all of a sudden they get this pop-up on their screen from a site that they went to. And this is designed to get you to click on Protect Now. Now, you don't want to do that because that could actually download malicious software to your computer. That's where the word malware comes from, by the way. And don't even click on the X, because that could do the same exact thing. So what I tell people is an easy way to get out of this, because they might be wondering, Jeff, how do I get out of this pop-up on my screen if I can't even click on the X? Well, on the handout that I provide, there's information about that, right? You hold down 3 keys on a keyboard, whether it's a Windows or a Mac, and that shows you how to get, that will allow you to get out of this safely. Go back to that pop-up. That task manager that comes up when you hold down those 3 keys, you recognize the programs that are running on your computer, those programs that you may use every day. But this one looks kind of strange. That's probably generating the pop-up. So I'm going to highlight that, click End Task, and that pop-up will disappear from your screen. That's the best way to get out of a pop-up safely. So I explained that to people, as well as tech support scams, which are, again, as we order things online, we're at home more, we're clicking on things. Maybe we've been tricked, and this pops up on the screen. And believe me, I've talked to clients of financial advisors who have responded to these by calling that phone number, and you get somebody on the line who's very skilled at manipulating the victim into giving them remote access to their computer. Now, if that happens, they can actually put malware on their computer or steal information from the victim's computer. And sometimes they want to be paid in gift cards. So these are two situations. If either of these things happen in this context, big red flags for fraud. We never pay anybody by gift card that we've met over the computer or talked to versus by after we've called the number in a pop-up like this. People often ask me too, Jeff, should I unsubscribe from email? Well, if it's a known entity, you've ordered something online, you got to give them your email address to do that. And then they're going to send you more emails to get you to buy more stuff. And you can unsubscribe from those. Federal law says that they have to give you a way to take you off their list and allow you to do that easily. Right? But if you're getting spam, that's unsolicited email. You haven't done business with these companies, characterize that as spam. Just send that to your spam folder, and then you'll eventually get less spam. If you respond to spam and say, take me off your list or try to unsubscribe, that just generates more spam because they'll sell your email address knowing that it is now valid to other people. You'll end up getting more spam like this to have to deal with. Send it to your spam folder, you'll be better off. And then in the last part of my presentation, I like to talk about passphrases as an alternative to passwords. The reason why this is important is because it solves two problems. Actually, it's a 2-for-1 special. It solves the problem of brute force hacking, criminals using computers to guess our passwords. And if they're not strong enough, they can get access to them and crack those passwords. But with passphrases, you can't do that because they're going to be long enough to prevent brute force hacking. Right? It also prevents credential stuffing. That's where a criminal gets a password from one site and they plug it into another site. It may not even be our fault in the first breach, but if we use the same password somewhere else, they get access to our second site. That's called credential stuffing. And passphrases, that can't happen because each passphrase is unique to each site. We'll get into that in a second. I'll show you an example. The problem is people don't even use strong enough passwords. Let's go to my whiteboard here. The most common passwords in use in the United States, you'll see the top 10 right here. And not strong, of course, can be cracked by brute force hacking. I like to think of it this way. You don't have to outrun the bear. You just have to outrun the other campers, right? And we're going to do that with strong passwords. So a strong password has to have this kind of complexity and this length, right? But for most people, they don't really like that for more than one account. So they'll end up recycling passwords. They recycle them over and over again for different accounts. And that puts you at risk for credential stuffing. You use it for multiple accounts. How many people use the same password for multiple accounts? I can't see you, but if you raise your hand, if you're not raising your hand, you're lying because everyone's done this, at least on occasion. Right? So we're going to use passphrases as a way to make something unique for each account. Now, here's why passphrases are great, because we can be creative in how we come up with the passphrases. I'll just give you an example, all right, of how we come up with a passphrase. All right, so there's your My Social Security account. Now, I didn't talk about this in the presentation today, but if you were setting up your My Social Security account, which prevents Social Security benefits fraud, I recommend that to everyone. This will be in my full-blown presentation, but you're going to set up a password for that. Now, remember, we're using passphrases, so maybe a good passphrase for Social Security. This is a nice one. Show me the money, Social Security. So that would be my passphrase for Social Security, as long as it's at least 12 characters long. It's super strong because of its length alone. But the Social Security Administration is a government agency. They haven't adapted to passphrase standards yet. They still want the complexity. So you can give them the complexity and still have a passphrase. So let's make the S a capital, we'll make the O a 0, put a $sign at the end. And now you have your passphrase, but also it meets their complex requirements. So you might run up against this when you try to put passphrases as a replacement for passwords, but you can simply do this to meet their requirements. And then finally, the last one I like to use is a real example of how you might come up with a passphrase for Netflix. Now, what's unique about Netflix to me? Well, Godfather's on Netflix. My family used to watch The Godfather when I was a kid growing up, and every year on Christmas we took a break about halfway through The Godfather. About halfway through, we waited for this line to be said in the movie by one of the actors, and it was like, wait on it, wait on it, wait on it. And then when the line was said, we got out a plate of cannolis and we celebrated Christmas that way. Yeah. Well, the line we were listening for was this one: leave the gun, take the cannolis. Yeah. Okay, so that would be unique for Netflix. Take out the spaces. There you have your passphrase for Netflix. And it's unique for that one because I'm not going to use it anywhere else. So I later in the presentation, I then summarize all the key points I've talked about, open it up for questions, and people have an opportunity to ask things about things that they've heard in the presentation or things that I haven't had a chance to cover, and we try to go through that as well. And then I also present an opportunity for them to look in more detail at my book, which is listed on my website. It's about cybercrime, and the good thing about it is it's only half the price of James Comey's book, so it's a great deal as well. You can't afford not to have it. Anyway, that's my presentation in short format. If you're interested in hearing more about that, please give me a call or send me an email, and we can go into more detail of the other things I cover and how I might help your audience, or if you're a financial advisor, your clients. Thanks very much for being here. I appreciate it.